Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a My 2 Cent video for this week, for the week of March 7th to the 13th, and we got 4 stories to cover, though, for this week, including some clarification on the whole situation with Microsoft buying Bethesda, though, the surprise announcement of a brand new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles video game, which is based on the trailer I've seen so far. It's awesome, thank you. Or, as a child from the 80s, though, radical and all that. Sorry if I'm being cheesy on that part. We also have some information about the Monster Hunter that had the Monster Hunter event, though. And we, of course, have basically some interesting stories about in regards of the Switch Pro, though, ranging from possible exclusivity to it to a chip that supplies the Nintendo Switch is sort of coming to an end, at least according to what this rumor is saying, though. And as always, if you're interested in any of the stories that I'm talking about, though, I'll have a link down in the description down below. You can click on those stories if it interests you and anything like that. Before we get started, though, we'll do what basically is the quick My 2 Cent part. Stories that have sort of caught my attention, though, but I'm not going to go into a huge amount of details or anything like that. The first one I do want to point out is that there's a couple regarding Apex Legends, though. The first one is that we now have information about what kind of version we'll get from Apex Legends. And as far as running it on the Nintendo Switch, it basically points to the fact that the game will run at 720p when it's in dock mode, or 576p when it's in handheld mode, and supposedly will run at a frame rate of 30 frames per second and all that stuff. What some people may be okay with that, some people may not, but again, assuming that's all correct, I'm looking at it the same way as I am with Doom and Doom Eternal running on the Nintendo Switch, though. It's a version that's probably not going to appeal to everyone out there and all that stuff, so it's going to depend on whether you're okay with that setting or not. We also learned that Apex Legends also on the Nintendo Switch will offer crossplay, but not cross-progression, at least for now. Now, I have heard some stories that crossplay has become sort of an issue with Apex Legends and all that stuff. And while I like the idea of crossplay, when you have those versions running at 60 frames per second and the Switch version running at 30 frames per second, I could see where that could technically become an issue. And I think a better approach would have been maybe add cross progression or cross save or anything like that. So that way, if you're playing it on the Switch with, the Switch audience and all that stuff, you could transfer that stuff over to, like, if you're playing it like on the PC or maybe any other, PC or possibly Xbox or anything like that. I mean, a good example is Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. They've updated that game to now you can take your save files from the Switch version over to the PC version and all that. So I think that might have been a better approach than trying to do crossplay, considering that the Switch version runs at 30 frames per second compared to the other versions running at 60 frames per second and all. We also learned that Aulx is doing a survey, basically asking what other games you like ported over to the Nintendo Switch. Aulx has been sort of odd when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. There are a lot of games that a lot of people would have liked for them to bring over, but for some reason they just make some bizarre decisions of ignoring the Nintendo Switch and all that stuff. And we see some developers have done that, and now some of them have started to realize maybe we need to pay more attention to the Nintendo Switch more. Honestly, I hear a lot of people talk about, they want to see the Persona series come over to the Nintendo Switch. I'm certainly down with that, but I would love to see Vanillaware games come over, like Odin Sphere, Dragon Crown, and Sentinel 13, Aegis Rim. I would like to see these games that are being published by Aulx to come over to the Nintendo Switch. I think it would be an ideal choice to bring those games over to the Nintendo Switch. We also learned that the second expansion for the Outer Worlds is going to be launching next week. However, it won't be out on the Nintendo Switch at this time, which, though disappointed, not really surprising considering the fact that when the first expansion came over, we had to wait a little bit for the Switch version. So more than likely, the second expansion is probably going to come sometime later, basically after the expansion on the PS4 and Xbox One. So somewhat disappointed it's not on the Nintendo Switch, but at this time, though, but not kind of surprised by this in any way. I know some people may or may not agree with that. We also learned that supposedly there is a job listing at EA that suggests that Madden could be coming to the Nintendo Switch. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not really a big Madden fan or anything like that, but I'm not here to say that I'm against it coming to the Nintendo Switch. If it does, that's great. We'll see if it does or not. I'm still a little iffy because this is EA and giving EA so-called great partnership with Nintendo in the past and all that stuff, but it is possible they may have changed their tune and might actually bring Madden to the Nintendo Switch. If that's the case, the question is, will it run on the Frostbite engine, which we know Plants vs. Zombies 2 is going to be running on the Frostbite engine on the Nintendo Switch, and will they actually put effort into Madden for the Switch, or are we going to see like a half-ass port like we've seen with several of the FIFA games that have come over to the Nintendo Switch? And not to mention, let's also not forget, EA's handling of the Madden license has not been, well, met with great responses. Not everyone's been happy with the way they've handled the NFL license or the Madden license over the years and all that stuff. We also learned that the ESRB has updated their ratings, and they has basically put out information in regards of Shin Megami Tensei 3 Remastered, which basically is going to indicate that a local release is certainly around the corner, which is, if that's true, that's good. I'm looking forward for this game to come over to the Nintendo Switch. I never played it, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing this one come over. We also learned that supposedly a whistleblower has recently came out against Capcom over supposedly forcing staff to work on site, ignoring COVID rules that the Japanese government has put out. Now, I don't know 100% if this is true or not, but if this is true, assuming this is all 100% true and all that stuff, then I do strongly condemn Capcom for doing this. This is deplorable and unacceptable. I mean, compared to what Virtuos, when they basically had to shut down one of their studios because of COVID, though, that led to obviously the delay of the Switch version for the Outer Worlds and all that stuff. And while that was unfortunate, though, I understand the reason why, because of the whole situation regarding COVID-19. And I think it is, if assuming this allegation is true, is absolutely wrong from what Capcom did, though. You should not create a situation that forces employees to choose between their health and able to get a paycheck to put food on the table. That is downright deplorable, though. I'm hoping Capcom addresses this problem and does a better job, but if this rumor is true, then I strongly condemn basically what Capcom did and all that. And last but not least, and this one is non-gaming related, this one has to do with movies related. It has to do with basically the upcoming Space Jam 2, the sequel to the 1996 original Space Jam, and it has to do with two characters. One, there's a report about Pepe Le Pew, the French skunk that, hits on the ladies, particularly the female cats, will not be in the sequel and all that stuff, nor will he be in future cartoons, while some people are making a big deal over the redesign of Laura Bunny and all that stuff, Bugs Bunny's love interest. I would say the decision to remove Pepe Le Pew from Space Jam 2 or future titles and all that stuff, I'm kind of mixed on this to a certain degree. On one hand, I don't see why they had to remove him. Maybe they could update him a little bit on that stuff. But on the other hand, I do see it as that this is Warner Brothers IP. They're the ones that made the decision, not the federal government. The federal government did not tell Warner Brothers to remove Pepe Le Pew or anything like that, nor have I seen any evidence to even back that up. This was Warner Brothers' decision and their decision alone. So it's the same view I have the whole situation with the Dr. Seuss books, though. I don't 100% agree with them to be removed or anything like that, or to be, publishers to stop, the publisher who owns the rights to stop publishing those books. But at the end of the day, I don't dispute the fact that they own the rights, it's their decision, they could choose to do so or not. And I also think and I do believe that it's up to the libraries to decide if they want to continue having those Dr. Seuss books up there or not. As far as Laura Bunny goes, design for that one, for her new design and all, honestly, I'm not really losing sleep over it and all that stuff. I mean, I won't deny I would prefer the Laura Bunny design from the original Space Jams, but it's not something I'm absolutely losing sleep over. And for the record, one scene with Laura Bunny with Bugs Bunny in the original Space Jam, when Bugs Bunny called her babe and all that stuff, she goes up to him and basically outdoes him in basketball and tells him, "Don't ever call me babe," and also, to me, the whole people who are making a big deal out of the Laura Bunny redesign, I just can't help but feel it's kind of a situation we saw with Pokemon Sword and Shield and the Captain Marvel movie, where some people just try to make it a big scene, blow it out of proportion online and all that stuff, only to find out it really didn't do damage to it at all. In the end, Pokemon Sword and Shield, despite people making a big deal about the whole Pokemon trade-in or visuals, it still did well. And despite people making a big deal about calling for a boycott of Captain Marvel, and that whole take the Anita challenge crap, that wasn't enough to stop that movie from being a success. Also, last but not least, and call this political if you want to, I'm very iffy about using the cancel culture card, though, because to me, I feel as though some people are using that to try to sort of, if they say something incredibly stupid, they're going to suddenly shout cancel culture and all that, which to me is just as bad as those who play the race card or the SJW or feminazi card. So I'm very cautious about anyone who's playing the cancel culture card on this and all that stuff. Whether this impacts, Space Jam 2 or not, we'll find out. We know it's going to be on HBO Max and it's going to be in theaters, so we'll see how this one does. Maybe it will have an impact, or maybe it won't. Time will ultimately tell. Okay, with the quick My 2 cent part now done, we'll get started with our first story, and this one has to do with the Switch Pro, or the Switch, particularly with the Switch Pro and all that. Now, last week, a story started to come out about basically that Nintendo is looking for a revision or a brand new Nintendo Switch. Some have called it a Switch 2, some call it a Switch Pro, some even refer to it as the new Nintendo Switch and all. And supposedly the report is that it will have a bigger screen and all that stuff. So there have been a lot, and this information started to leak out during the 4th anniversary last week when the Nintendo Switch has come out, which has obviously been very successful for Nintendo. Well, now we apparently are getting some new information that may indicate that there may be exclusives for the Switch, for the Switch Pro, and also a possibility that Nvidia is stopping production on one of the chips SoCs that powers the Nintendo Switch. Both of these articles are from Nintendo Life. The first one, let's see if I can find it. All right, the first one is First one is basically about basically that Nintendo Switch Pro will have exclusives, said this one insider. According to the report, it reads, quote, Bloomberg published a story earlier this week about Nintendo's plan to release a new Switch model that will come equipped with a Samsung OLED display, which will consume less batteries and offer high contrast and possibly even a faster response time. It reports a 7-inch 720p resolution panel and will be able to support 4K ultra high definition graphics when paired with television. Reset Era user and known industry insider Nate Drake, often referred to as Nate the Hate, I believe so, I'm not 100% sure, who has been linked to various other Nintendo leaks in the past, has now expanded on the story, claiming the new Switch unit will host some selective exclusives, especially from third-party partners. According to some of his comments he wrote, he said, quote, there will be some select exclusives, especially from third-party partners. May not be a big number of them, but I know of at least one. In a separate post, the same source said Nintendo plans was to position the device as a revision. Nintendo plans are to position it as a revision, a premium model, if you will. So the idea of exclusives to say a Switch Pro, assuming the Switch Pro does exist, probably wouldn't be surprising to some folks, to some Nintendo fans who have, who've been around for a while. I mean, for those who may remember, when Nintendo went from the old 3DS to, at the time, the new 3DS, it did have an exclusive, by the way, of Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, as that was the game that can only run on basically the new Nintendo 3DS. If you try to play it on the old 3DS, it would not work. Other games, for example, such as Hyrule Warriors Legends, if you were to play that game on the old 3DS, it would work, but, pardon my language, it ran like shit. When compared to the new 3DS, however, it ran way better than it did on the old 3DS and all that stuff. So I would not be completely surprised if this rumor about exclusivities for the Switch Pro was true by any extent and all that, though I'm kind of mixed of it, of this happening and all that. I'm worried about the whole idea of splitting the player base, given how well the Switch is doing right now and all that stuff, but we'll see if that pops up. As far as any exclusivity goes, it could be anything. I mean, it could be, say, something like Grand Theft Auto 5 or Red Dead Redemption, though. I mean, I think it's a stretch to claim Red Dead Redemption 2 or something like that, but who knows? Could be like, maybe it could be other games out there. So, I mean, it's possible, but again, we'll have to wait and see. We'll see what exclusive that could be. It might be that exclusive, such as that rumored, excuse me, Resident Evil game that supposedly is, quote, Switch focus at this time. But again, time will tell if that rumor is true. Another thing to point out is that apparently it does seem as though NVIDIA might be dropping the Tegra X1 chip altogether, which could give us an idea, could give us maybe somewhat of an idea what direction Nintendo might be going with the Nintendo Switch, or what other chip they might choose. In another article from Nintendo Life, it reads that, quote, NVIDIA is stopping production of Switch's most important hardware this year. It reads, quote, NVIDIA, the company which produced the Tegra X1 Marco system on a chip that powers both the Switch and Switch Lite, is reportedly bringing production of the SoC to an end this year, fueling more speculation that a Switch Pro is on its way. The news comes from Game Reactor, which has spoken to a source close to the matter. The source claims production on the Tegra X1 Marco, M-A-R-I-C-O, will end in 2021, but does not elaborate on which chip will be replacing it in the Nintendo supply chain. It is fair to assume that Nintendo will ensure it has a healthy stockpile of Tegra X1 Marco chips prior to production coming to a close, but it does beg the question, if the report is true and does Nintendo think the Switch is only halfway through its lifespan, what happens beyond this year? A logic answer will be that Nintendo will phase out the original Switch model and its Lite sibling in favor of the new version of both models, as it did with the 3DS and 2DS, with the new 3DS and 2DS became available. While the Switch Pro is yet to be officially confirmed, and Nintendo has stated it has no plans for new hardware in the near future, a report that has placed a big order for a Samsung-made OLED panel suggests an updated hardware SKU is indeed on its way. An improved NVIDIA-made SoC would be a fairly reasonable inclusion to expect if the console is to offer a performance boost over the original version. So if this report's true that they're stopping production on the Tegra X1 chip, the chip that powers the Nintendo Switch, then that could basically lead to maybe Nintendo's looking at possibly a more powerful chipset from NVIDIA and all that stuff. Maybe they figure, you know what, the Switch we went with the Tegra X1. The Switch has now become the concept of the Switch has become definitely much more of a success. Let's see if we could take a look at what NVIDIA has to offer. Let's see if they have a more powerful chip. Now, I'm not expecting, even if they go with a more powerful chip that NVIDIA has, I'm not expecting it to be on the same level as, say, like what a PS5 or the Xbox Series S and X, though. Most expect the Switch Pro will be mostly on par with maybe like a base PS4 or something like that. So we'll have to wait and see, assuming if this rumor is true. But I am curious to see if it is true, what other SoC that they go with NVIDIA. After all, they do have a partnership with NVIDIA that's supposedly going to be lasting up to two decades. So apparently there's going to be a lot of SoCs that Nintendo can choose from. What they go with, that remains to be seen, assuming this rumor is true and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 2, and this one has to do with the whole Monster Hunter event that happened this week. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at Monster Hunter and all that stuff. So this year, we're going to be seeing 2 Monster Hunter games come to the Nintendo Switch. Monster Hunter Rise, which is running on the Resident Evil engine, although there's been some back and forth on whether that's running on a custom-made Switch version of the RE engine or it's the actual RE engine. There's been some confusion back and forth on that one. And of course, Monster Hunter Stories 2. Both of these games I'm definitely looking forward to and basically wanting to try those out. Especially Monster Hunter Stories 2 because I never played the first one and all that. So it was interesting that they held an event, sort of like their own version of like a Nintendo Direct. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to watch it. Again, balance between work and doing watching some of these events and all that stuff. But we did get some information that has come out about it, though, that does give us some interesting information from that event as well. That should be pleasing to some folks, specifically Monster Hunter fans. Let's start off first with the fact that with Monster Hunter Rise, as we now know that it will be getting another demo, which should be out right now. I'm downloading that right now on my Nintendo Switch, and that supposedly will be getting updates, future free content update and all. So here's what it says, quote, from Nintendo Life, that is, today's Monster Hunter digital event has now come to an end, and there were plenty of exciting reveals for fans of the series, as well as confirmation on Monster Hunter Stories 2, Switch's release dates, which I'll get to that in just a minute. The showcase also revealed that Monster Hunter Rise will soon be treated with a second free demo, fittingly called Monster Hunter Rise Demo Version 2. This second demo will be available from this coming Friday and will be adding challenging advanced quests where players will get to take on Maglamo, Magnamalo. Again, apologize if I'm not saying the name correctly and all that stuff. It was also confirmed that future updates for Monster Hunter Rise will be available for free for all players. The first of these the first of these is expected to be available from the end of April and will introduce various of new monsters, including newly announced Cameo, Chameleos. They also mentioned and all that stuff. So basically, they show off not only a new trailer, but basically there will be a demo that's out right now, which is good. And the fact that we're getting free content update, which certainly is a nice thing. Although I do wonder although it's great that we're getting free content update, I do wonder if there will also be any paid content that Capcom would put out in regards for Monster Hunter Rise. But either way, definitely nice that they're offering free content updates. For free content and all that stuff, can't argue with that. Anyway, another part that they talked about is Monster Hunter Stories 2, which hasn't gotten as much attention as way Monster Hunter Rise is, but nevertheless, it's definitely one of the Monster Hunter titles I'm definitely looking forward to trying out. But we now have an official, not only a launch date, but also some amiibos as well. So according to another article from Nintendo Life, it points out that The Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruins is planned to launch in July, though. Reads a quote, Monster Hunter Stories Wings of Ruins has now received a confirmed Switch release date as Capcom has today announced that the game will launch for the system on July 9th. The news comes from today's Monster Hunter digital event, which is still it was streaming on YouTube and Twitch, though, although it's come to an end and all. The event debuted a brand new trailer for the game and all that stuff. Seeing the trailer, definitely looks nice. You definitely get a little bit of a Pokemon vibe out of it to a certain extent. Not to mention, the character designs kind of remind me of 2007's Wii title from Capcom, Zack and Wiki and all. Though, alongside the release date news, it will also confirm that 3 of the game's character, Anna, Reswing Ratha, and Tsukino, Tsukino, will be receiving amiibo figures. This will be released alongside the game and will offer in-game bonuses. And that's not all, as the deluxe edition was also revealed. The deluxe edition will include Razwing's layer armor set and a NERGIGANTE inspire hairstyle for players, the Kuna outfit for your wearing companion Anna, and 2 new outfits though, and 2 sticker set depicting the various companion players various companion players will encounter throughout the journey. More than likely though, that's basically just cosmetics and all that stuff, at least from what I've been reading though. This showcase, they also talk about Monster Hunter will be receiving the second free demo and all that stuff. I've also heard as well that you can basically, I think, stuff you unlock on Monster Hunter Rise, you could transfer some of that could help in Monster Hunter Stories 2. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I've heard stories about that. But in either case, though, it's nice that we're basically got an official release date for Monster Hunter Stories 2 and all that stuff. And it looks like Capcom's really pushing to get these games out and all that. And I'm certainly happy about that. Monster Hunter Stories 2 is one I'd like to try. Like I said, I never played the first one, so that one's going to be very interesting to see how well that one plays and all that stuff. And not to mention, we know it's also coming to Steam as well, so no word about cross progression or cross save or anything like that, but I'm sure some people would like to see something like that though. So overall, very interesting event that Capcom hosted though. Definitely looking forward to Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter Stories 2 and all that, and I'm definitely looking forward to trying those games out. I do hope they have a demo for Monster Hunter Stories 2, however, because I would like to see how that one feels, though, compared to what Monster Hunter Rise has, in which they've had the last 2 demos. So we'll have to wait and see, but definitely looking forward to both of these Monster Hunter games. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 3, and we'll be talking about the surprise announcement of a brand new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game called Shredder's Revenge. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of our My True Set video, and for this one, I'm going to be talking about the surprise announcement that we got that we're getting a brand new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game entitled Shredder's Revenge. Now, as a child of the 80s, though, growing up, though, I was into basically the NES, and I was also into, Ghostbusters and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I did have, He-Man action figures and all back then, though, and I do remember maybe taking a stab at Transformers and G.I. Joes, but for me, Ghostbusters and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the thing for me, though. And I, of course, remember playing the video games as well, such as the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game. I remember playing that at a local Chuck E. Cheese when I was young and all that. To even on the NES, though, which surprisingly was not a bad port, even though the game may not look exactly like the arcade version. It was definitely, I did have to say Konami did a good job with that game, especially since we got 2 extra levels in that game. And even though they replaced, Bebop and Rocksteady in the parking lot area with Baxter Stocking being the Fly and all that stuff. Plus, I remember renting Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, and of course, who can forget Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time as well. So, I mean, those were just classic beat-em-up games, and I just remember enjoying those games. But the series has sort of, kind of not, it wasn't as it used to be, though, and some of the video games haven't exactly lived up to the expectations, from Ubisoft's take on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to including trying to redo Turtles in Time, to Platinum handling the license and all that, which didn't exactly clicked with everyone and all that stuff. So it was kind of interesting to hear that the developers who handled, Streets of Rage 4 and teaming up with the folks who did Scott Pilgrim vs. the World to basically team up together to bring a brand new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game that that is inspired by the classic 80s and 90s, not only 80s and 90s cartoon, but the 80s and 90s video game. In another article from Nintendo Life, it reads that, quote, "While they never really went away, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles will hold a special place in the hearts of many NES and Super NES owners. The 8-bit entries was massive popular during the initial run of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cartoon in the early 90s, while Turtles in Time became one of the SNES most beloved side-scrolling brawlers. Now we're getting a game that looks suspiciously like the spiritual successor to that title in the form of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, and perhaps even more exciting is the fact that it's being developed by the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World Studio Tribute Games and is being distributed by Streets of Rage 4 publisher DOT-EMU. Speaking to Game Informer, Tribute Games co-founder had this to say, quote, we wanted to bring back a game for the fans of the 87 animated series and also the old arcade games of the 90s because we felt that people missed it. And including us becoming personal, because personally, I played those games a lot as a kid and I missed them a lot. So that was the idea that started it. The bad news, there's no solid release date in place and we don't know if it's coming to the Switch. According to Game Informer, it's coming to unspecific consoles and PC. Game Informer shed a little light on the project came to be. Nickelodeon, which holds the Turtle license, approached DOT-EMU, which also published the amazing Wonder Boy Dragon Trap remake, with an offer to make a game based on one of its IPs. DOT-EMU picked Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a property that Tribute Games had been keen to work on since 2010. Tribute Games co-founder said this, quote, we were always super persistent. Like, if we were going to take on one of your IPs, we wanted to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Every time the topic was brought up about us taking on a project, I would always say, well, we really want to do a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We grew up in the arcades and played Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so we really want to have a stab at it. A chance meeting with the CEO of DOT-EMU led to the official beginning of the project as Imbert explained. So I was at GDC and I managed to get Tribute Games contracts. So I said, hey guys, are you around? Should we talk? And so we saw each other for the first time in San Francisco, and it was really a nice first contact. And we basically had the same idea and things we wanted to do in mind for this project, though. So to me, judging by the gameplay footage that they showed so far and all that stuff, I am super stoked for this. This definitely has the 80s and 90s vibes to the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all, and that certainly isn't a bad thing and all that. There are some questions I do have, however, about this game, though. Will this game stay true to the original arcade, though? Or could we see some sort of RPG elements very similar to basically what we saw with River City Ransom, or the recent release by Way Forward, River City Girls? or basically, you know, Scott Pilgrim versus the world. So I'm curious to see what direction they will go with this. As far as it, judging by the footage when they showed off the 4 players, is this going to be couch co-op only? Is it going to have online? It will have both and all. As far as what systems it will be on and all, while they haven't officially announced the systems though, I have a feeling there is a very, very strong chance that this will probably pop up on the Nintendo Switch. I think more than likely it will. Again, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that we will see this on Nintendo Switch. As for the story and all that stuff, I'm curious if it will be a brand new entry and all, or could we see something along the lines of what we saw with last year's Streets of Rage 4, where that game was a continuation from Streets of Rage 1, 2, and 3. So, will the story be a sort of a continuation from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time? Will they mention any of the events from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, the Manhattan Project? So, there's still, there's still some questions we don't know about it, not to mention a release date. But overall, I have to say, the 80s kid inside of me is very excited with this news, though. I am looking forward to seeing, hopefully they'll have more information and maybe a release date, though. I am hoping for a physical version, and I know this is a long shot, and we don't know if there's licensing issues, but if we could get the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 and 3 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 on the NES and Super NES on the Nintendo Switch as part of Switch's online service, I would definitely be down with that. I mean, we've gotten arcade games coming to the Nintendo Switch. I would love for them to bring those games over to the Nintendo Switch. Again, there might be licenses issues. I'm not 100% sure, considering that Konami doesn't have the license for the Ninja Turtles anymore. So, but one can dream, one can hope that that happens though. But in either way, definitely glad that we're getting a new Ninja Turtles game, and but based on what we've seen so far, it seems to play a homage to the classic 80s and 90s cartoon and video game. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 4, and we'll be hearing about Bethesda and Microsoft and the official complete of Microsoft owning Bethesda, and something about in regards of exclusivities and all. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our 4th and final part of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we want to talk about is basically Microsoft and Bethesda. Now, one of the biggest shocks from last year was the announcement out of nowhere of Microsoft buying Bethesda. This took a lot of people by surprise and kind of shook the industry in a way to see this high profile like publisher and all that stuff, although some may disagree with some of their Bethesda's decision, like how they handle Fallout 76 and all that stuff, but nevertheless it's here that Microsoft was really buying the studio and all, and it kind of reinforced the argument of Microsoft being a bit more aggressive this generation with Xbox Series X and S than they were with Xbox One and all that stuff. So it certainly shocked a lot of people, and it started to raise questions regarding the future of, say, like Bethesda's games, including on games on other platforms and all that stuff. That has sort of always lingered and all that stuff. For me, though, while I certainly was surprised by this, but I also acknowledge the fact that with them now owning Bethesda, whatever decision they make going forward is going to be their call, since they're going to decide whether they choose to bring games over or keep it on the Xbox ecosystem and all. Well, this week though, we finally got some clarification from the head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, and it kind of, I would say, depending on how you read it though, or depending on how you want to see it, some may view it means that all games will just be on Xbox Game Pass, PC, and the Xbox system. Others might read it as that it does leave the door open a little bit in terms of that some Bethesda games may still remain multi-platform. In several different articles, including, we'll start from with Xbox, from Pure Xbox though, the article reads that, quote, Xbox and Bethesda are officially a thing, much like will they, won't they couple you see in every single rom-com. Together, the companies are committed to delivering great games, but more specifically, they're looking to bring great exclusive titles to platforms that allow Xbox Game Pass. In a recent roundhouse talk between the two companies, Xbox Phil Spencer attempted to clear the air once and for all on what the deal means in terms of exclusivity. While obviously contract obligations on certain games, those will continue, and Spencer recognized there are communities of players which still continue to play Bethesda games on other platforms, and on that front, they will continue to be supported. He said, quote, "So obviously I can't sit here and say every Bethesda game is exclusive, because we know that's not true. They are contracted, obligated, that we're going to see through as we do in every one of these instances. We have games that exist on other platforms, and we're going to go support those games on the platform they're on. There's communities for players. We love those communities, and we'll continue to invest in them. And even in future, there might be things that have their contract things or legacy on different platforms that will go do. Despite this initial thought, it seems future games will be aimed to be exclusive held on Xbox Game Pass, meaning only players who own an Xbox PC or device that supports Game Pass will be able to dive into these great exclusive." According to Phil Spencer, he says, quote, "But if you're an Xbox customer, the thing I want you to know is that this is about delivering great exclusives of games for you that ship on platforms where Game Pass exists. And that's our goal, and that's what we're doing this. That's the root of this partnership that we're building, and the creative capability we will be able to bring to the market for Xbox customers is going to be the best it's ever been for Xbox after we're done here." While this doesn't go into specific titles, it seems a pretty clear indication that future games going forward will be exclusive to the Xbox family and that the Game Pass service. Obviously, we'll learn more over the coming months what that means for other titles, most likely during E3 when the companies showcase their latest titles, but it definitely seems to be an exciting time for Xbox fans in any case. Meanwhile, IGN sort of reported on that as well. They say that, quote, they said in one of their comments that said, quote, was that many fans have been interested in whether new games from Bethesda could be exclusive to the platform going forward as a result of the deal. Spencer's comments suggest that some will. Previously, Spencer said that future Bethesda titles will come to other consoles on a case-by-case basis. So, judging by how I'm reading this, though, assuming I'm reading this correctly, though, I could be literally wrong, it does sound like, say, for example, that titles like, say, Fallout or something like that could technically continue on other platforms as well. So it means that, like, those titles probably will continue on and all that stuff, but any new titles that Bethesda works on, though, anything like that, if they come up with like a brand new IP, only on Xbox, only on Game Pass, only on PC. That's where you're only going to be able to play them. So it's possible that Elder Scrolls 6, unless otherwise, it's possible that it could still come to the PS5, but at the same time, it may be Xbox exclusive. So, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the direction Microsoft goes now that they own Bethesda and all. So it could be the kind of situation we saw with Minecraft, how Microsoft owns Minecraft, but allowed developers to put the game on other platforms. So it's possible Microsoft could do that. It is possible, though, judging by how at least I'm reading it, though. But it wouldn't surprise me if it just means like, nope, you only get to play it on either the Xbox or PC or Game Pass, or it could possibly be that, you know what, Xbox gets it first, Switch and PS5 will get it later. So we'll still have to wait and see how this is going to play out. But judging by how I'm reading this, though, and like I said, I could be literally wrong on this, though, it sounds like certain titles like, say, Fallout or Wolfenstein or even maybe the Elder Scrolls games, they may continue on it may continue on other platforms and may not be just exclusive for the Xbox, but any brand new IP that Bethesda comes up with, though, going forward, only on Xbox. That's pretty much the direction they want. They're probably going to go with it, though. So that's how I'm certainly reading it right now. Another thing to point out is that Phil Spencer also mentioned about basically wanting to work with Tango Games and having a foot in like the Japanese market, though. And in same article from Pure Xbox, it says, quote, "Unless you've been living under a rock, you know that Xbox has required lots of studios this week after the ZeniMax deal finally got approved." Excuse me. One of those studios is Tango Gameworks, who are most notably known for the Evil Within series. Featuring a lot of Japanese talent, Spencer believes the studio is a great step in securing a foothold in Japan, a market which for a while now has been a very PlayStation focused, although I've been hearing differently with being given how well the Nintendo Switch has been doing over there and all. But anyway, during yesterday's Roundhouse discussion about the acquisition, Spencer commented on his desire for a first-party presence in Japan. He said, quote, I'm ready to go to Tokyo to see Tango Gameworks, a studio which I have such respect for, and the history of creation there. I've talked for a long time about our desire to have more of a first-party presence in Japan. This is a great step there, thinking about the map of where these teams are and talking all about the games they're working on. I can't wait to speak with the Tango team and get to know them. Studio founder Shinji Mikami, if I apologize for not saying his name correctly, also says he looks forward to the inspiration that will spark from our new relationship with the people at Xbox. Currently, the studio is working on Ghostwire Tokyo, which is a timed PS5 exclusive. Spencer has said any exclusive deals will still go ahead, but no doubt the game will make its way to the Xbox eventually. So that would be interesting to see exactly what he does in terms of trying to get a foot in the Japanese market, though, because in the past, Microsoft has kind of struggled trying to step into the market and all that stuff. For the most part, it has been dominated by Sony, but lately we've seen Nintendo been doing extremely well thanks to the Nintendo Switch and all. So I'm curious if it's going to be how well they are able to reach out to the Japanese market and all that stuff. And who knows, maybe they might acquire more studios in Japan to be under the Microsoft umbrella. So basically, we do know that the former creator of Dead or Alive has expressed interest in being acquired by Microsoft, getting his relationship with Microsoft. So that's a possibility and all that stuff. So overall, I would say the takeaway from this Microsoft and Bethesda stuff is that like I said before, how I'm reading it, it seems as though games like Fallout and possibly, Elder Scrolls, those might, I'm not 100% sure, might still be multi-platform, but we'll have to wait and see. But one thing for certain is any new titles that Bethesda comes up with, that is going to be exclusive on the Xbox and PC and Game Pass. So if you want to play the brand spanking new title or a brand spanking new IP from Bethesda, unfortunately you're going to have to either get an Xbox or Xbox Series S and X or Game Pass or play it on PC. That's the direction they're going with this. I know some people may not like it though, and I will admit that to some degree I would still rather see Bethesda become third party though, but you know what? It's somewhat disappointing, but I'm not really shocked by this, though. It doesn't surprise me that this is the direction that Bethesda is going to go with Microsoft and all that stuff. Some may disagree with it. Some may be okay with it, though. Either way, we'll see we'll see how well this direction goes for Microsoft, though. But it doesn't surprise me this is the direction they are going. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about the possibility of exclusives for the Switch Pro? Do you think this is a good idea, assuming this rumor is true? Do you think this is a bad idea? Do you think it will happen? And what about the rumor that NVIDIA is starting to stop production of the Tegra X1 chip that powers the Nintendo Switch and all? Do you think this is a sign indicating that we're going to be hearing a announcement about a Switch Pro or a new Nintendo Switch or Switch anytime soon? Do you think this is a big deal? Do you think this is not a big deal? What are your thoughts about the Monster Hunter event and some of the announcement of the launch date for Monster Hunter Stories, to the Amiibos, to the second demo? Are you hyped for these games in any way? Are you looking to pick up both these Monster Hunter games? Are you looking to pick up one? What are your thoughts about the announcement of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge? Are you looking forward to trying this game out? Are you glad that they're bringing back the style similar to the 80s and 90s cartoon and video games and all that? And what platforms do you think it will come on? And do you think it will more than likely come to the Nintendo Switch? Clear my throat. And what are your thoughts about now that Microsoft has owned Bethesda.to? Do you think all Bethesda games going forward will be only on Xbox, Game Pass, and PC? Do you think that they will continue having some Xbox games be multi-platform, like Elder Scrolls or Fallout or possibly Doom or even Within and all that stuff? And what are your thoughts about them working with Tango Games in terms of trying to get a foot in the Japanese market and working with Japanese studios, though? Do you think this is a step in the right direction? Do you think Microsoft will succeed this time around, or do you don't think that's going to happen at all? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!